gain switch is a 2 HP wide module for the Eurorack modular format. It gives switchable access to the gain jumpers on the back of the Transistor Ladder Filter and the Discrete Cascaded VCA. But it can also be used in conjunction with the jumpers on the back of the Gemini 2412 in order to switch between the normal SEM-style resonance level and a much higher level of resonance which will allow the filters to self-oscillate. It also features a 6-way passive multiple, and it's a passive module, so it requires no power. This is a gain switch module, and it's passive, so there's no power cable on the back to connect. You've just got these two cables here that are marked VCA and VCF, which connect to the jumper positions on the appropriate modules, and they correspond to these two switches. This is the VCA, and on the back it's just a solitary jumper. When the jumper is in place, the module will behave normally, but when the jumper is removed, it will activate a much higher gain setting, allowing you to get more distortion. This simulates the same method that was used on the Minimoog by taking the audio from the headphone output and running it back into the audio input, and to create a gain loop basically. So the jumper is removed. The gain switch will basically stand in for the jumper and allow you to switch this connection on and off, or switch the extra gain on and off. Same applies to the ladder filter. On the back, again, just one jumper, and when this is removed, it also activates a much higher gain setting, allowing you to get more distortion out of the module. The jumpers that you remove, just put them somewhere safe just to make sure they don't get lost, so you can, if you ever decide to disconnect the gain switch and use them on their own again, then you can put these back in place. So I'm going to position my gain switch about here, just before the VCA, and have the filter after the oscillators, and then the DH ADSR envelope here. So first of all, just check their positions, make sure they fit. And then I know that the gain switch will go in that gap, and I'll bolt this in first. VCF cable this side, and all the VCA over there. And it's not important which way round this goes on to the jumper position. It makes the same difference. And lastly, connect the VCA. Make sure the minus 12 volt pin is in the right position relative to the cable. And again, connect these two pins. Here I've got the gain switch being used as part of a typical 3 VCO voice setup, and I'm also making use of the multiples. So I've got an output from the envelope generator going into the bottom input in the multiple, and then the one above that is connected to the frequency CV input of the filter, and the one above that is connected to the CV input of the VCA, meaning that this envelope generator is affecting both of these modules simultaneously, so they're both getting exactly the same envelope signal. I'm using 3 sawtooth waves going into the ladder filter, and I've got the input set at about 50% or 12 o'clock. And similarly on the VCA, the master is all the way up, but the input attenuator for audio 1, which is where the output of the filter is going, that's also 50%. And in this case, because of the hot signal coming from or level of signal coming from the VCOs, if I start to push the levels much beyond that, it will start to get more distorted. It will just start to saturate the signal. But it also get louder, and that's why the master volume comes in handy on the VCA. So I'm going to increase the level of these and take them all the way up to their maximum levels to show you how much extra distortion you get from just these 2 modules on their own. But first I need to bring the master down a little bit. And starting with the filter. So you can already hear that's distorted the signal quite a lot more, and the 3 individual pitches of the VCOs will become sort of more mashed together and less distinct from each other as the signal becomes more distorted. If I take it all the way up, so it's changed the character of the sound significantly. The VCA, the difference will be a lot more extreme in the level of volume, so I'll have to take the master down a bit more. And then all the way. So that's about the level of distortion you can get out of driving both modules together without changing or removing the jumper from the back of the modules or using the gain switch. But look at each module individually now. I'll take the VCA down on the input level to relatively much less distorted level, and I'll raise the master to compensate for it. Now I'll engage the gain switch just for the filter. And off. And just to see what it sounds like going from a relatively undistorted level. Where you'll hear the most noticeable difference will be on the VCA, because as you're increasing the gain, you're increasing the level of volume, so it'll be much more apparent. So leaving the filter gain switch switched off and a relatively clean level, got all the inputs at 50%, so nothing's sort of distorting too much. And just leaving the VCA just in the same position and switching the gain switch on. So you can hear there's a significant increase in volume, and it's also driving it a bit and just distorting it a bit more. And if I take the master down so I can increase this. And that's just the VCA on its own. And then with the gain switch, take that down and drive the filter. So that's just a filter without the gain switch. And it gets really fuzzy and much more noticeably distorted. You can also use the gain switch with the Gemini. On the back there's these two jumpers here, and they relate to the resonance settings on both filters. With the pins unconnected, so the jumper's removed, and when you first get the module you'll probably find they're like this, which, because they're only covering one pin, it's the same as if the jumper had been removed. In this state, that is just a normal setting, so you'll get a normal sort of SEM level of resonance. But when you put the pin in place, then you'll get a much higher level of resonance, and the filter will be able to self-oscillate. So you can use the gain switch to switch between these two behaviours in the same way as you would with the ladder filter and the VCA. If I remove both the pins and then use either of the two cables from the end of the gain switch, but given that you've got two switches, then I would ordinarily just use the top switch to connect to the filter on the left side, because it just seems more intuitive, but it doesn't really matter. So in that case, if I take the VCF cable, and because I want to connect to the left hand side, I want to connect to the right on the back, and then just do the same for the other cable, and then you can use this to conveniently switch between the two filter behaviours. This is the gain switch set up with the Gemini. If you notice, the switches are currently in the down position, which when they're used with the ladder filter and the VCA, that would mean that they're on. But because the jumpers on the Gemini work the other way around, the switches are actually off in the down position. Here I've got 3 VCOs going into the muting mixer and the output going into input 1 of the Gemini. The Gemini is in dual mode, which means that whatever is coming in input 1 is passed across to both filters separately, and then their combined output comes out of the dual output here and it's going into the VCA, and then the mix of the two filters is determined by this pot, the audio mix. So I've got that 50% at the moment. First filter is on low pass, second on band pass, but if you notice, the resonance on both of these is up very high. But this is in standard SEM mode at the moment, so it's not self-oscillating. I've also got the CV from the keyboard sent to a multiple and then to both 1 volt per octave inputs on the Gemini, so that when it's self-oscillating I can control the filter's pitch just like there were 2 simple sine wave oscillators. So if I first start with this filter, we'll turn the resonance on. And then I'll turn the second one. And I'll turn off the audio from the oscillators altogether. So that's just the Gemini that you're hearing now. I'll turn the first one off. And turn the other one off and you'll get nothing at all.